about 62,000 signatures so that there could be a realignment of the current severance tax. Back in 2008, the governor, behind closed doors with the industry, decided that they would come up with an improvement on the old severance tax that was very outdated. And they did make some improvements, but it had some very unfortunate exemptions connected with it. So while the tax level being proposed was an increase, it was going to give an exemption of the first 3 years for the industry to earn back 100% of their investment in the wells. And if they had not earned it back in 3 years completely, they would be given the opportunity for a 4th year. At that time, during that 4-year period, the tax, instead of 5%, was only going to be 1.5%. And so then it went on to where if the well was not a really good producer, and as Jack had mentioned, the life of wells are very high output on the front end. And Jack mentioned 5 years. I've heard actually as little as 3 years. It's when you really see your major production. And so at the time that the 3 years is over, they were still getting a big exemption down to 1.25% because the well was not producing. It was a mature well that was not producing anymore of a high level. So the industry has had a tax on the books right now that sounded like we had taken care of the problem, but we didn't. And during that time, there was a tremendous amount of activity in the play, putting in the 7,000, or I think it's 4,000 wells. And so they ended up having huge, huge amounts of road damage. And that has amounted to about, well, at the fall of 2010, and we certainly have seen a lot of activity since then. Even at that time, it was over $500,000, and the tax had only brought in about $500 million. And they had only earned about $50,000 worth of severance tax during that time. 50 million. I keep saying the wrong amount. But anyway, the proportion, it was only about 10% that they could receive back. And the projections, of course, had been that it was going to be very good in producing revenue for the state because the price of gas was at that time higher, and the estimates done by the University of Arkansas with a good company paying for it had indicated that it was going to be making much more. And instead, we now have huge amounts of damage and no money that has come in from the industry to cover this. So to get back to the current severance tax, Mr. Sheffield Nelson, who had been connected with the ARCLA company for many years, their CEO, has been very anxious to see that there's some improvement done on this and that we get some better money for the state. And so the present severance tax bill that is being promoted and the petition is simply to get it on the ballot. It is not a yes or no as to whether you think that there should be a tax increase. The petition that is going around now is to say that the people of Arkansas have had a problem here, and they need by now to have addressed what the problem is and to do something about it. And so we want to give everyone the chance in November to go to vote on whether or not there should be an increase to a 7% without exemptions. That's the way the bill is. But if you sign a petition that is purely to say that the people of the state should have the opportunity to say whether they think this should be improved. Now, there is a tremendous amount of effort and money being spent by the opposition. They don't want you to even have a chance to vote. And so whether or not they will weigh a heavier message than we will be able to do to get this petition approved with all of the signatures, it's going to be a tough fight. Public education is a slow process. These numbers of the petition drive has to be completed by July. And so it's the type of thing that unless there are professionals who are out gathering signatures, we may not have enough energy in people trying to get this done. The universities are critical in having young people. As Jack said, they need to be the one to step up and really start taking some help with this. And the petition drives with the university can be a very big help in moving this forward. There are activists within the play that are interested in seeing this passed, but there are also a lot of very afraid people. And people who are dealing with the state agencies and with the industry, they keep their heads kind of low. And so they don't want their names on petitions in many cases. Or they may be getting a small royalty